And now in this next section, we're calling this a view from the field. And it's my pleasure and honor to invite up to our setup stage here, Addie Goodman, the President and CEO for JCC Chicago. One and only Rabbi Bill Kaplan, CEO of Shalom Institute, now. And from the Great North, Andrew Levy, Executive Director of the Schwartz Reisman Center in Toronto. Now, here's the background, folks. Jim and I have been talking about a way to bring the voices of our board execs into our meeting. We imagine this might become a regular segment of our meetings to provide the board with a perspective about what is on the minds of our JCC execs right now, and so that you will also have an opportunity to ask questions of them. There's three things that we're hopeful that this session will provide for you today. By sharing your local experiences, challenges, and opportunities, we hope you'll walk away with insights into the unique needs and dynamics of JCCs and camps that they represent. Fine folks up here. This also promotes a culture of knowledge sharing, enabling our board to learn from successful strategies and potential solutions to common challenges. And then finally, when local JCC execs provide input at the continental level, it strengthens the connection between local realities and high-level strategic goals. This ongoing dialogue ensures that the Continental Board remains grounded in the needs of our JCCs, fostering greater accountability and alignment with the movement. So here's the format for today, folks. To kick things off, I'm going to ask a question or two to hear from each of our three esteemed leaders here, and after these opening comments, we'll turn it over to you folks to ask questions of them. But I think we have a unique group that we're doing this with for the first time. Obviously, with Addie, we're coming off the heels of the J Summit in Chicago, a big ordeal within the local community. Thoughts there. Rabbi Bill, who's been involved obviously with the camp situation. Some timeliness, obviously they were starting construction and then the fire issues hit. Whether he's going to talk about that or not, I don't know. And then Andrew, who's got a lot of stuff going on, but they're a future host at JCC Maccabi. So you got some interesting perspectives, but I just want to start off with that, I guess, softball. And that's basically, guys, what's on your mind right now as the JCC CEO right now? So let's begin with Addie on that question. What's on your mind?
Thank you. It's on my mind. Is this on? First, I was also a member of the search committee that selected Barak. And I would share that what's really on my mind over the past day and a half here, being in a community with Barak here in the room with us, is really how excited I am on behalf of Chicago JCC and the field to be represented at the association level by somebody who has such depth of experience in the field and is still in the field, actually. And as you all know, we just had some time with Barak, and his refrain from the start was, "I am one of you." And I think our field will really hear that, and that will resonate significantly. So I start with that piece. Locally, I'm going to pick up on a comment that Marissa, or a question she had for Barak yesterday about teens. And JCC Maccabi and DBYO really being significant players in the teen space. And teens are very much on our mind in Chicago. They've been a big bet for us since the pandemic. And in fact, we serve about 3,000 teens in Chicago, which is quadruple the number of BBYO's greater Midwest region. We are a much bigger player in the teen space than BBYO. And our teens are really, really having a hard time in that space around the rise of anti-Semitism. We run a program called Jewish Student Connection, which is basically after school Jew club in about 25 secular high schools. And what our kids and those teen staff, the Jewish teen staff that we have, are seeing are the same kinds of things that are happening here on Columbia's campus and in our 2030 population of young adults. And that work of how we support these young people who are trying to figure out how they're going to be Jewish. Can they show up as a Jew? Do they have to pick Jewish community over broader community, and what that means for them? Brock also mentioned it in his comments about what is our role in the space of anti-Semitism and addressing it. You all who did come to J Summit saw in your goodie bags work around growing hope, our movement around bridge building. And that's very much become a new initiative in Chicago as well, it's very ethereal. It is something that we are just driving towards because we have to do something. And if you don't do anything, then you are stuck where you are. And we are all really grappling with how to help our young people feel good about being young Jews. So that's some of my mind.
Bill?
Okay, whoa, wow, thank you. So to touch on what Addie just said about Barack, hi Barack. I'm gonna hold you to it because yesterday I think Sue asked the question on Zoom about what are your priorities programmatically, and I heard one, executive development, and I heard two, camp. Thank you, which is amazing, which I'm going to share with our independent JCC camp group. There are about 10 or 11 of us, and there's also 13 or 14 others that are part of JCCs that, in terms of overnight camps. I'm coming with the hat of overnight camps, so really appreciate that because I think it's important to us, and also I just want to thank Jen and Carrie. Carrie's the one. So last month, feels like years ago, we were in Chicago together and at the Jewish Camp Summit and had a meeting with the independent camp execs, and it was a listening session. You heard us, there's support, and I think that moving forward, we are inspired about the direction that things are heading. We'll let you know the last 6 or 7 years, it's kind of things that devolved within the association of what was there for us before and what's going on in our field right now. Although there's the Foundation for Jewish Camp that has grown the last 20 years, and there's the Grinspoon Jewish Camp consultations and support. There's nothing like our Hevre, our group, and our business. I say the business model, what's top of my head, because we deal with it, we're totally separate from our rebuild from the Woolsey fire, and then we don't even know what the aftermath of this will bring. But it's financial sustainability. At that conference at Grinspoon I went to, there was a session on financial sustainability. It was standing room only, and it was not just camps that were struggling, it was the head of overseas URJ camps and all the URJ camps. It was the Ramah camps. It was some of the camps that are larger and very successful that were in that room, that room was maybe a smaller group before. So our business has become very complex, especially over the last 5 or 10 years in terms of costs. Obviously for California, there's 3 independent JCC camps in California, Camp Mountain High in the San Diego area, David's, Camp Tawonga and Shalom Institute. And we have 2 overnight camps. We have 1 camp that serves the Russian-speaking Jewish community as well. Obviously this week, there's challenges of fire insurance already. We don't even know if we're going to be able to get insurance now. We have no idea what that is. And that's going to probably, with things happening all over the country, it's going to happen there too. And also with liability insurance, gas costs, food costs, labor costs, it's never ending. At the same time, our businesses are being complex. I just want you to know that our independent camps are becoming agencies. We are JCCs. We have changed. And the good news is this is my 35th year. Yes, I started when I was 2. Exactly. I've seen the changes, and I've seen for the better in the JCC movement, what the respect of where our camps were 20, 25 years ago. And there may be a few that were highly respected. Now I think they're all very much respected. The leadership in the camps are amazing. And I think you should be very proud of what's been accomplished. And I think the reality is, because of the complexity, because of the financial challenges, there's a need more of JCC Association supporting the camps. Everybody is very much committed to the movement, but they really need that extra support. So that's what's going on.
Thank you. Andrew?
What's really on my mind is when Ed was speaking before, is if he's going to get to the point where he's auctioning off the scarf, but if I really think about JCCs, especially in Toronto over the last year and a bit, as we kind of really dug deep on Maccabi, there's been a shift in our community, and I've been involved in JCCs a long time, probably half my life, and we talk a lot for many years about the apathetic Jewish community, right? In Toronto, this is not a joke, this is a real thing. If you go to the Schwartz Reisman Center, you probably live on a street maybe called along Elon Ramon Boulevard or Shalom Avenue. Okay, it is not a what you would think is a Jewish community. Your kids may go to a school called Anne Frank, and the odds are you're eating at Cafe Land or Aroma 4 times a week. But if you ask those people what their affiliation is, they would say they're unaffiliated Jews. Okay, and what's happening is we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to connect people. And then October 7th happened, and now there's a surge of deep purpose that is coming out, and they're looking at the JCC for a way to connect it. So Maccabi for us became a really interesting conversation, because originally we thought, okay, it was a great initiative that's helped us galvanize the community, and really what it has done for us is it's positioned us at a time where everyone's talking about higher security costs and Jew hatred, and allowed us to flip the conversation to be a conversation about Jewish joy, which has really repositioned the JCC. So if I can take it full circle, what's really on my mind as I think about the JCC Association and the movement that we're part of, and the roles that we all have in going back to our communities to get them hooked on this movement. There's a great YouTube video, if you haven't seen it, I'm happy to send it to anybody. It's about how you create a movement, and it's some crazy guy dancing in the middle of the field, and he's just a crazy guy dancing in the middle of the field. And then the second person comes, and then like next thing you know, the whole field is dancing like crazy. And it's really the second person that creates a movement. And each one of us in our local community is the second person to JCC Association. So as I go back to my local community, and I urge you to do the same, it's really an important time for us to think about how we can create this movement.
Thank you. Since we got an early start, I want to ask you guys one more question, because I want you to give a little honor your own facilities and give me 1 or 2 things that each of you are personally proud about of what's going on in your community within your organization. So let's go, we'll start with Andrew and work our way back the other way.
Maybe 2 things. One is really simple, just because it was an aha for us, and Addie mentioned it before. When we dug into Maccabi, we started to do a little bit of data collection on teen engagement, which we knew we were engaging teens, but we were never seen as the primary teen engagement organization. And in our community, if you're engaging 1,000 or 2,000 teens, you're seen as the elite organization for teen engagement. And we're digging through our numbers, and we get to like 5,000 teens that we engage between our 2 JCCs, and it really forced us to rethink how we're going to move forward our post-programming. But I think the way I would look at this, the answer to this question is, we talk about on-ramps. We have a donor in our community that describes the affiliation highway, and we want to create as many on-ramps as possible. And the more touch points we give each of those people, the more they move into the express lane. When you're in the express lane, it's really hard to get off the highway. So, the JCC has always been seen as a place for social, recreational, educational, cultural programming. And we took a bit of a deep dive this year into the entrepreneurial space. Really entrepreneurial for us. We partnered with a local university, like top business school in our country, as well as an accelerator program. And we put 150 new founders through this initiative. And the coolest part is we partnered with Yuri Levine, who's the co-founder of Waze. So he comes in and he teaches these cohorts. We're on our 3rd cohort now. But the most beautiful part is that these are young people who would normally not get involved in the JCC. They come to our buildings. They're like, I haven't been here since I was 10 years old. We joke they leave us when they go to university and college. They come back when they have kids. And this is a way for us to fill that gap. And the amount of networking programs that's now happening in the evenings with this group. They come on Wednesdays. The program starts at 12. They show up at 9 and they hang out together. So it's just, for us, it's about how do we continue to build more on-ramps, and how do we get the JCC to be this dynamic hub of community for the people we serve.
Hey, I mentioned before that we were the camp for the Russian-speaking Jewish community, and a few years ago, the Jewish Federation did a major study of Jewish LA and discovered there were 50,000 Russian-speaking Jews, and probably more in the Los Angeles area. And we actually started or took over an overnight camp that was prior to our fire, the Woolsey Fire 2018, had 100 kids for 1 week. Now we're pushing 200 for 2 weeks, and most likely over the next few years that will become probably a camp with 200 to 300 kids for the whole summer. It's a whole separate camp. And in 2018, the Jewish Federation also turned over Russian Jewish family programming to us. And and now they're supporting it. And I think we are engaging and providing incredible programming year round, along with that amazing Jewish camp experience for so many kids in Southern California and actually in Northern California. We're one of the only Russian Jewish speaking overnight camps in North America. And I think it's just been great to see the opportunity for us to be able to engage that community and bring them into more Jewish life.
There's a couple things I think on our end. We have a new strategic plan this year, and I think what was really interesting in working through a strategic plan is that it really wasn't designed to solve a problem, but it was really built to continue a trajectory of positive growth that we've seen in the organization, which kind of opened up a whole new kind of lens of opportunity. One of those areas is really being able to leverage our new Salesforce database. We migrated to Track and Record Salesforce for 2020. And now we're really being able to use data to inform decisions. In Chicago, we're built really heavily around early childhood with 7 centers, a bunch of day camp locations, and a really large overnight camp, in addition to a lot of community engagement work. But that pipeline, we're able to kind of see how long is a person spending in our day camp, how long is a person spending in our overnight camp, and really try to move the needle from, say, 2.5 years in day camp to 3.5 years in day camp, the migration from day camp to overnight camp. And in particular, I want to talk about day camp, because before the pandemic, and day camp, like our teens, was a big bet for JCC throughout the pandemic. We've gone from about 2,800 kids across our day camps and a budget of about $8 to $9 million to a net gain of about 1,000 campers. We're now almost 4,000 campers at day camp and a budget of almost $15 million. That's the financial fuel of our agency, which has only been significantly enhanced by our adoption of Sunrise Day Camp in Chicago, coming out of Long Island JCC, the full summer day camp for children with cancer and their siblings provided free. I think we were the 7th or 8th location in the country. And that program has now become a social service arm within an area of program expertise for JCC Chicago that has just ratcheted up our new donor acquisition, people who have never been investors in JCC, know about JCC, but something that we do very well, camping, has become a significant donor attraction to JCC, and even has allowed us to build out a campus that was deeply underutilized with donor funds because they cared about this program where they had no involvement prior to JCC. So all of this work, just something that we've all done, and all JCCs have a camp, we've really amplified to redefine and take a new skin on what JCC Chicago looks like to the broader community. And it's really enabled us to get rid of some stuff that doesn't work so well for our community and isn't so central, and focus on the things that we do really well. And the one last thing I do want to say about day camp is about 70% of our campers and staff are Jewish and about 30% are not. Net, it's up and down depending on the location. And there was a time when funders like a Crown Family Philanthropies would say we want 100% of those kids to be Jewish. That's what we care about. And there's a much greater recognition now that it's important to have diversity in immersive Jewish programs, because the drivers of anti-Semitism are not knowing a Jewish person and not having a Jewish experience. And we're addressing that through our Jewish camps. And we're all doing that when we have some diversity in those summer programs.
Great. Thank you. As you can see, some great thought leaders, wonderful folks within their local community, but I really appreciate the way, in terms of different perspectives of what you shared and how one thing leads you to another thing of the next level opportunity. And each of you have those kind of things of what you see and the opportunity, whether you're refreshing, remaking, remodeling, making it special for your community. So thank you for that. So with those couple of questions, I think we've got a good framework. I'd like to invite all of you to, have the opportunity to raise your hands and give these guys some questions. And I'll welcome them. And you want to direct a question to a certain individual, that's fine too. We've got microphones, and also would welcome Or other board execs, if there's something you see that you'd like to go a little deeper in, something that was new to you, use this opportunity. Okay, so we're gonna begin with Jay Lieberman. Where's he from?
That doesn't look like it's on. No.
Hello? Can I just talk or?
Just fast.
Stand up and talk.
Okay, no, this is great, and David, Jen, Barack, whoever like put this on the agenda, you know, I think hearing from Mark said is unbelievable. And I appreciate learning all the things you all are doing in your local community. My question, I guess, is a little kind of changing direction a little bit. As execs that sit on this board and everyone, we all, hello? I guess what I'm curious about, and I'm so excited, and one thing, I don't know if every exec has spoken out at some point during the last 24 hours, but the fact that all of you seem to speak to Barack's background and his familiarity with you and, you know, coming from the field and the advantage that is, the benefit that it brings with it is phenomenal. And I know it's going to open up, you know, kind of the lines of communication and hopefully some alignment, you know, from the association that maybe hadn't felt. Jen obviously has done tremendous work in her time. As a board member who's a lay leader, you know, one of the things that caught me so off guard a year ago, and I remember sitting next to Andrew and Brian at our paradigm meeting. First mistake. Yeah. I guess, I don't know if I had a blind spot. I did not realize the level of frustration that was in the field. And I think I'm usually a pretty good, you know, I have my finger on the pulse of things. And so moving into this time with Barack as our leader, it's great that that there's going to be a level of awareness and continuity between you and Barack. As a board member, I want to make sure that we are more aware and aligned and helping support the field as well. And so I don't know that I have a specific question, but I would love to hear your comment on how the rest of the board members that don't have intimate knowledge of what you guys are doing every day, how we can be more aware and more supportive. So.
I'll start, and I think probably everyone has a perspective. You know, I think that the board execs, like we've questioned amongst ourselves, what is our role as a board exec? So much as like looking at the bylaws, you know, are we real board members? Are we different kind of board members? And we've had those conversations amongst ourselves and with Jen and Dory and others to try to understand our place. We all report to boards. There's a level of respect, right, to your board members, and you all are sort of, I bring a traditional board member, we're board execs, we have a different kind of title. And so I think that there's been some hesitancy to kind of speak up in a way that is super candid and forthcoming when maybe the perspective of the execs seems maybe different or, you know, off course than the way the association is moving forward. I think that with Barack being on board and kind of we're turning a corner at the page, and however you want to, you know, metaphorically describe it, it is a reset, and we've done a lot of work over the past year and a half between JCCA and the exec group to understand one another, hear one another, and better define what our role can and should be to bring together the field with the association to create that movement. So I think that there's been some gray area, and we're really looking for clarity, and I think we're finding our way there.
I think for me, I'm a product of the movement. I was doing some quick math yesterday. I turned 50 next year, and next year will be my 25th year working for the movement. So half my life has been in this movement. And I make a point, when we were in Chicago for the stakeholder meeting, I stayed a day later and I spent a day with Addie, and I really spent the time understanding kind of her world. So I make a point to be a student of the movement. I think we all need to make a point to be a student of the movement. I appreciate that we're in different roles, For those of you who were on the board for a while, we had the privilege to host the board probably 8-9 years ago in Toronto as we were building JCCs. We're able to show you the kind of work that we do, and you're able to meet some of our people, and really only once you're on the ground, you see and feel it. So what we're talking about here from a board perspective, the past is the past, and what I really want to be able to do is look at this room, like I said to Barack, I mean, Jen's done a wonderful job, Barack will do a wonderful job, but they're like one person. And this room is filled with talent. And until we all can figure out what we're gonna do to unlock that, it's gonna be the same challenge that we faced for many years, which is we're the best kept secret in the Jewish world. And the only people that know it are ourselves, and we keep talking to ourselves. So we need to become students of the movement. We need to be fully transparent with each other. I do think there's a special opportunity for the execs to have a different voice, but I also think we now have people on the inside who understand what it's like to be an exec, which is a different part of the conversation. You know, we're a grassroots, salt of the earth. Like, that's who we are. And when you come to the JCCs and you see how they operate, you see that the people on the ground are really just in relation with their members. And we need to be in relation, deep relation with each other and deep relation with the field. So not sure if it fully answers your question, but it's more of a perspective of the future of how we may want to think about how we operate so that the board gets a full, complete picture, but also takes the responsibility, or we collectively take responsibility to truly understand. Because even this small group who I'm really close with, when we talk about a view from the field, I can only give you my perspective and the perspective of probably the 10 people I speak to the most in the movement. There's a whole part of the field that I know I have a blind spot to. Little camps.
Right camps. So when I joined the board, which is actually right during the pandemic, and Steve Engel, who was the board member, who said, hey, I kind of represent the independent JCC camps, and that's, you know, we need somebody and you're next. Took that on, and I just found the last few years a little bit of frustration that there wasn't things that I probably like, shouldn't you inform me about that? Or this is happening. There was a lot of things that just weren't happening. I wasn't so comfortable with, and I questioned often, and I'm super excited now because it started, Carrie and Jen, I mentioned it before, but just including me as a board exec in some of the planning and conversations, and then Barack, the same thing, where we are, you know, aligned in terms of strategizing. I want to help as a board exec. I want to help with the independent JCC camps. I know this world. I've seen reiterations of this over the last 35 years. I sat in a room at JCC Association probably 20 years ago with Lenny Silverman trying to create a mission statement for JCC camps, which it was kind of a little bit before its time when everybody was a little more disparate. We are more aligned in terms of our values and what we do now. And I want to amplify the camp, JCC camp, not just the independent camps, but the camps that are part of the movement, amplify it because we're good. We are the largest Jewish camping network. And that's how I share who we are at Shalom Institute. We're part of this movement and we have a lot to celebrate. And I don't think that it's as celebrated as much. And I will constantly be like in the stakeholder paradigm and other stuff where JCCs and JCC camps. I'm gonna be annoying because I think it's a strength of our field, and I want to make sure it's amplified. I will let you know, to share something. Years ago, I went to JCC Association and said, listen, look at all these camps that are 4 or 5 of us were leaders in the Jewish environmental movement. We have an opportunity right now, 20 years ago, and it was lost. And there are other organizations that are doing great work, but we could have been the ones, put it out there. At that time, New Jersey wide, Tawanga, Shalom, Surprise Lake, you know, we were the leaders and other people took that on. And I think there's just an opportunity right now and I really want to help with that. And I want to be used as not just like to show up.
I just want to reiterate, one thing that JCC Chicago's camp is Camp Shy. And our camp director really does echo the things that Bill is sharing as another large Jewish overnight camp that is not only the independents, but the other overnight camps that are within the JCC. The sentiment is similar. And also, I just want to echo that the execs on the board, you know, we live and breathe JCC day in and day out. It is our life, it is our livelihood, families are involved, we're just in it so deeply, and we are really sitting on this board because we are passionate about our movement, the potential, and we really come in this room with that in mind.
Great response to Jay's question. Good thoughts from all of you. I know. Useful interlude. On keyboards, Morgan has a question from our JCCA TV.
So straight from you two. It's from Sue Straight and it's for Addie. And she says, interesting that Chicago has non-Jewish campers. Milwaukee has focused only on Jewish campers. How many other camps welcome non-Jews? And is there a change in programming to accommodate non-Jews, such as things around Shabbat?
So we've always welcomed non-Jewish campers. We're a public nonprofit in Illinois. We welcome everybody. But what I will say is the programming is always a Jewish program. We have Shabbat, we have Israel Week, we have the Maccabi Games, et cetera, Tzedakah. And in fact, this past summer, the Tzedakah was raising money for Sunrise Day Camp. And two things I would note. One, many of our non-Jewish campers and counselors talk about like Shabbat as being their favorite part of the week because Shabbat's awesome. And whether you're Jewish or not, it's a good time and it feels good. I often talk, it just feels good to do Jewish. It's a good feeling. Also, in the beginning of this summer in particular, even amongst our Jewish staff, we saw like, campers or counselors who wear Stars of David or Hansas inside, the sweatshirt or t-shirt. And as the summer went on, those necklaces came out. And what those Jewish campers and counselors felt was comfort in their Jewish space. And what the non-Jewish campers and counselors saw was a Jewish friend and such unity and safety in that space. It really, so nothing's different in the program, but I think that our awareness of how important it is to look at campus bridge building when you have a diverse community is really heightened. And counselor training, staff training, now talks much more about that, but the program is Jewish camp like it's always been.
Bill, I think you should also share as well. You did.
I could make another comment just because I want to put it out there. And for this board to know that I think just for the camps and others that, in terms of, I see the philanthropic and what things go for, one of the things that I just want to put out there because I love to see it come back in some way, just to say thank you, is that, there was a program with Houlihan many years ago that funded by the Avi High Foundation, the Mandel Center. Shalom Institute, the benefit, we had 5 people go through that program, 2-year program, trip to Israel, Jewish education, JCC for camp directors. And those 5 people are still on my leadership team. And it also was the impetus for me, as I studied with Alvin Mars and Shelley Dorff, to actually decide to go to rabbinical school. Although Stephen Rod tried to talk me out of it in the early 90s. You should become a JCC person at the New Workers many years ago, but I ended up doing both. So anyway, just something like that, is there are things that are impact the field, and there's so many others that went through that program, the relationships that we built through that program, they're just very important for us to think about.
Okay. David, do we need a microphone?
Really, I heard my question to Addie, but anybody can talk about it. We never talk about relationships with the Federation. I'm only kind of pointing at you out because I've looked at what Andrew goes through. So a discussion of the relationship with the federations at JCC doesn't get entertained here, which is surprising because it's both from a funding perspective and community building. For some people, like in Baltimore, when I hear Brock talk about it, it's phenomenal. But everywhere else, I don't hear that. So
I think every community and federation is different. And I'd say in Chicago, we have a really large federation, a very strong federation. And with every relationship, there are challenges and opportunities. There are some ways our federation is incredibly supportive and helpful. For example, their government affairs department has helped us when it came to supporting relief funding and helping us navigate those waters, supporting us with background checks in the Chicago public school system when we were running programming there. We were stuck in a wait line that we couldn't get out of, et cetera, advocacy for early childhood, which is a field that is flailing nationally and really struggling in Chicago. So there's a lot of ways where they have expertise that we really lean into, and they provide that service to us and others in the community. The Federation's Early Childhood Collaborative, which the Sheva team and the Elevated team is connected to through JCCA also, has done an incredible job of coalescing all of the Jewish preschools. So we are all of sort of equal quality in the community, and not one's better than the other, or they're operating very differently. So there's tremendous strength that we bring and challenges. 50, 60 years ago, the Federation provided 100% of our operating budget. Now it provides 9 to 10% in a different kind of way. And mental models take a long time to shift. So, we're always working on that relationship and making sure that there's partnership and respect and understanding. I have a bigger, stronger federation. I know Barak, we've talked a little bit about some challenges maybe he started with there. Andrew and I have talked about federation challenges. It's not always the easiest piece, but it's a necessary part of our larger Jewish communal network. And so we all work really hard, I think, to make that positive as can be.
A view from the field welcomes a question from the field. Mark?
I think Addie, you're very modest in answering that question. You did a great job. But it's not always that smooth. And I think it really depends on city and how they're structured. For my federation is housed in my building. They're a tenant. It doesn't mean it goes well all the time, but I also come from the federation side, so I have long-standing relationships with them. So it really varies, and I think every community varies, and I think that's why all of you coming to communities at some point, maybe rotating these meetings to different communities of different sizes, you really will get a better sense of what the field is like. Because each of us come from different size communities, and rotating these board meetings would be a great way to build greater strength and camaraderie actually amongst us in this room, because we would all probably not have things to rush off to go see other friends or family that are in the New York area, but we would be focused on being together. So I think it's important that, yes, the federation relationship, but it's really the relationship with the entire community, and how does a JCC, who is the largest gathering place in each community, could and can be, especially in my community, how do we leverage that for the benefit of not just our J, but how do we leverage that to the greater Jewish community in each of our cities?
So David, you asked the question, yet at the same time, David may have made one of the most strategic Federation JCC decisions that I've ever seen. So I said yesterday, we're all in the Jewish continuity business. I think it's Doria's Avram Infeld always reminds us we all have the same mission, right? So when you brought the JCC Association board meeting to Toronto, David made a decision to reach out to the CEO of the Federation and ask him one simple question, which is, can you explain why we invested $300 million to build JCCs? And it put our CEO in front of this board, talking about the value of JCCs to the community. And the real work we have to do, locally it's challenging, right? You're never a prophet in your own town. And one of the values that Jerome did bring to Toronto was whenever he would come in, he would be able to represent us in a very positive way to the Federation. So I do think there is immense value in this table, this room, helping shepherd that relationship, because locally there's just personalities and there's, KPIs and there's all sorts of things that challenge us. But if you look at it broadly from the greater mission of what we're really trying to do, everyone's in full alignment. Everybody just wants, greater Jewish life. So, I tell you this all the time, but I think it's important that everyone understands. And to reiterate Mark's point, this is just a great opportunity to put the Federation in your communities in front of a group like this to then rationalize, justify, talk about the relationship, which then changes every conversation you're gonna have with them afterwards.
Phyllis.
I don't know if we break it down the same way as we used to, but it feels like this is a large community panel. And my concern is that for having come from Akron, Ohio, I can remember when we got 50 kids to something, it was a huge success. And so it might be interesting for you guys to talk to everyone in the room from smaller communities about not just the huge exciting numbers, which I am like, Addie is my person, but to really talk about what smaller communities might be looking at in terms of impactful decisions, both at the board level and at the program level, that can be as impactful as what you guys are able to talk about with the huge numbers. And I will also add parenthetically that being in Toronto was one of the most incredible JCC experiences that I had had, to just see how Federation can work together. As monitored as that conversation might have been, it felt authentic and was very impactful in terms of the true bigger picture. I really think if we all can begin to look at going to other communities again, it was a huge opportunity to see different sizes and how communities work together.
It's a great question. Jill and I spoke about this last night at dinner. First of all, you should all come back to Toronto. The Federation is opening a 2-pad ice hockey arena attached to the Schwartz Reisman Center in 5 months as a way to talk about how to build more on-ramps to community, both for the Jewish community and for the broader community. But to Jill's point last night over dinner, and I agree with you, we should be thinking about the diversity of these panels. The Toronto JCC, at least through my evolution, we started the 3-legged stool at some point. Like when David and I began this at the Prosserman JCC, it was a $5 million budget. We're now a $34 million budget. So we've gone through the gamut as we built an open JCC. So we lived in the world where before we had a center up where Schwartz Reisman is, where we were operating in people's basements and doing kind of grassroots programming that felt a little bit more like a small JCC in terms of how to do outreach into the community. But I think our own biases are, we're in metro communities, forget the size of our budgets and the size of our JCCs. It's very different. And Jill, what you say last night at dinner was like, you got to all come down to Charlotte and see how we operate, and Durham and see how we operate. Like, it's a completely different world. So as we educate ourselves, I think it's critical that we understand the needs of the small Jewish communities, because those are the ones who actually are going to use this movement the most. And that's where we're going to get the greatest return on the investment into the greater mission that we're trying to deliver.
You know, Andrew talked about when he spent a day in Chicago, and I think we have a lot of locations across Chicagoland. I think we were headed into like the 5th, about a dozen places we're in, and Andrew's like, this is overwhelming. And, he's like, you can't get to all these in one day. I said, I don't even get here in like a month or 2. It's just not my role. Like talking to, again, Jill, where we sat together yesterday, and she's like, I'm in charge of the JCC and the Federation and the school and the foundation. I was like, that's overwhelming. So I think we all have our own space, but I also want to give an example of, even though JCC Chicago is very big, and we I say go big or go home, this Friday we have our first teeny tiny little preschool Shabbat afternoon program on Fridays that a board member who sends her kid to a half-day preschool at a local synagogue was kind of looking for enrichment. She thought the JCC would be good. And so we're piloting something for like a dozen kids with a bus we're trying something teeny it's not a money maker. It's a community engagement program. It's a relationship with a synagogue preschool community we don't have a relationship with, part of our growing partnership pillar of the strategic plan. So even though we're big, we do little things too, to always try stuff and build new things and meet the community's needs where they are.
I think the next panel might be North Carolina and Kentucky and Colorado.
Okay.
So I'll just say I'm Jill Madsen, and I'm the CEO in Durham, North Carolina. I've been there for 10 years, Gabe's hometown. And when I started, our budget was just under $3 million. Our J had only been open for 3 years, so we're one of the newer J's. That's how small our Jewish community is before that a J was not needed. And even building the J, the community was not sure that we could sustain it. The community was not even able to raise the full $10 million to build the J. That being said, we just finished our second capital campaign because we have already hit capacity in every single program area. We raised $10 million from 1/7 of the households in 1 year. So that's but single-handedly as what was a small community, now I think we're in the middle. I don't really know because we're an integrated community as well. So our budget is very confusing to try and figure out what is what. We could not have done any of the things that we have done without the JCCA. The JCCA came out to help build the building to try and figure out, how do you build a J? What do you need? Our community was like, do we really need a health and wellness center? And the JCCA was like, yes. If you want to be financially solvent, like you need to have this revenue stream. And that is the only reason why it was built. Otherwise, the board was gonna say, nah, there's a lot of other gyms in the area. We don't need to do that. They single-handedly helped design the fitness center. We just opened up our first early childhood center. Veronica has been instrumental in helping me help the team do that while I am now leading our day school because of transition there. So there is so many things that the JCCA is able to do to help small communities that there really is no dollar amount that you can put to because the smaller communities just don't have the financial assets to make happen. There's just not the resources or the staff. When I think about when I first started, we had 13 full-time staff members. That's it. For a federation, a JCC, a Jewish Family Services, 13. We now have 350 year-round employees, full-time and part-time, and are an $8.5 million budget. But it's because of being able to have colleagues and support and be able to connect our aquatics director to 4 other aquatics directors of like, here's how you do this. So snapshot from small world.
Yeah, Jane, we could have like Jane and then Paul.
Not exactly a question, it's a request. A request counts as a question. We're a relatively large community, but we need a lot of help. We have transition. Oh, St. Louis, Missouri. Big J, but has a lot of community challenges because a lot of strong, significant Jewish synagogues, we're finding it difficult. We have been, trend. So, but I guess my request is that presentations like this, and I'm sure you're going to do them next week when you have the execs, and we're going to do it when you have the full, the more that you can inspire our staff, that's number one. And as someone said it yesterday, the current board chairs of our J's, not everybody got to J Summit to hear them. Not all of our execs and all of our leadership, and even a couple steps down beyond our executive directors, get to hear these inspirational educational programs. So the more that you can infiltrate. Maybe we can't get our board chairs there in person, but Zooms with our board chairs where they can get exposed to this. That's my response. Thanks.
And I want to say in the aftermath of obviously J Summit and even this opportunity here that we have today, all these things are recorded and we put them up in the cloud on the links through the resource center. But you do have opportunities. If something stands out for any of you, please tap that and share it within your communities. So thank you. Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, a comment first. I think that this is a very helpful, informative session, and I appreciate all of you being available and your openness. It's not always that we leave this this set of meetings feeling as though we are really connected, and I feel this time quite connected both to the professional and other lay leaders. So thank you so much for this view from the field. My question relates to this new stakeholder model, and you are all where the rubber meets the road. You have to deliver this new model and sell it to your communities in order to support the field and the finances for the association. What's your impression about how that will go and delivering this message about the importance of the field and the association leading the movement?
We don't sell through this whole now.
A lot of our budget is going to be reliant on.
I think my feeling, and this is just Andrew speaking, okay? I believe that we have to do ourselves a service and start to quantify, figure out how we quantify the value to the JCC, just in the essence of how the JCC exec gets to evolve in their career and what that ultimately actually means. You just heard from Jill. I think my story is very similar. I don't know, what this looks like, but we really got to spend some time really digging into this, because the greatest value proposition right now is not measured, and the greatest value proposition is the community aspect. So I think someone, maybe it was Mark Fisher, said yesterday, just avoid the chart, right? And I'm in full alignment with that, because I think we're in a position right now where we have a split in the field. You have some people who are all in and they're like, you know what, this is an investment into a greater purpose. I'm going to make my investment. We're going to have the JCC Association steward that gift. It's going to pay dividends to the movement. Some years I'm going to really win. Some years I may not win as much, but the collective will win, and that means we all win. And then there's the other group, which is very transactional, and it's just, what am I getting for my money? If I'm paying $50,000, how do I get at least $50,000 back? Okay, that conversation has to go away, and it's only going to go away through relational building, and there has to be a strategy, which we've already started to talk about, on how the board execs are going to get aligned on messaging and really start to bring the association back to its core, right, which is building community. And at the end of the day, if you walked into we have 18,000 members at our 2 JCCs, just fitness members. And if you sat down with them in our sales office and you asked them if you asked our sales staff what they were selling, they're going to give you a tour of the facility. They are not selling the facility. They're selling the community. And we need to get back to selling the community. So we're in a position where I've heard saying loud and clear yesterday, we have a framework. We need a framework. We turned the taps off after COVID, right? We said, we're no longer on this pay a percentage, pay what you want. We started negotiating, and we got to get out of that business and into something that at least gives us a starting point. I think we have a starting point. I think we have a commitment from the board execs that we're all in at whatever that level needs to be to support it. But we have to be really in on the messaging, which is the JCC Association helps build strong Jewish community locally and continentally, and I think we should bottle what Jill just said, and we should get that out to every community out there, because we don't do a good enough job selling this. And I said from the beginning, and Sandy's heard this 100 times, this is a sales and marketing problem. That's all it is, and we're trying to create the price point before we've created the messaging. And I think what we've created is the sandbox. So now we know where we're going to play, and now we got to get our professionals to get out there and be able to make the case as to why this is the place that we all need to play, and that we need to be amplifying that message. And there will be people who are going to want the value, and they'll be on the outside for a bit. And guess what? We're going to create FOMO, and they're going to want to be on the inside. And then once we start to do that and really start to quantify the impact, which I know Brock will do, that's the world that he lives in, it's game over, and we can stop being the best kept secret, and we can start actually making a difference. So I don't want to get caught up in the logistics of this. I want to get caught up in the long-term possibilities that this is going to create.
Thank you.
I'm inspired by two things. One is that over the years, this is for the independent JCC camps, knowing where a few of them over the years, maybe the last 10 years, have maybe threatened to walk away. They haven't. And that's the power of movement. And I'm seeing that they haven't walked away, and they showed up in Chicago. They wanted to be heard, and they wanted to share it, and wanted to be together. So I think that's so positive that there's the power of movement, even when you're frustrated the things going on. I think the second part is, you know, as we strategize with Barack and Jen and Carrie about how to bring everybody on board, I think we're there with that. It's gonna take a little bit of strategy, but I think it's positive. But again, sense of movement is really key, that everybody's still in.
I would just add to that, you know, speaking as a JCC who paid a lot of money in dues and pulled back to redirect those funds to pay folks who used to be part of the association staff who set up shop somewhere else, and I paid that money, right? So for me, it was really a business decision because I wasn't feeling a movement. It felt very transactional because I think maybe it was Bill who said things were happening that maybe we didn't understand, we couldn't have the sightline, it was lack of transparency, lack of conversation, consults, et cetera. Now that, last year for J Summit, Chicago made the decision to really lean in and give significantly to help elevate J Summit as sort of a restoration of that year's dues. Moving forward, part of, just speaking again for myself, my message to other execs is going to be that story, that we were a JCC that pulled back and we are a JCC that's leaning in and moving forward. The other, I just lost my train of thought for 1 second. Oh, the other piece I think that's important is that while we talk in this room about budget, and budget is important for an organization to run, the conversation about budget is not of interest to the field. The conversation about movement is of interest. So as much as we can refrain from talking about what the association needs to run its operations, because every JCC is running its operations, so like your operations are more important than theirs, that doesn't hold water. But we can talk about joining and being together, you have a movement without both pieces. That's the only conversation to have. If one's talking about budget and one's talking about movement, we're worlds apart, and that formula doesn't work.
Well, I think that's a great question, great responses to finish this session. I just want to thank Andrew and Bill and Addie and all of you for obviously the back and forth, great responses and thoughtful, consideration of everything, So I said, these guys are great thought leaders, you see why. And I just want to thank all of you and thank everybody for participating in this session. I think it was a great start for the idea of a view from the field, an important piece. So thank you.